Hello, welcome back to Me and Mental, the podcast where we discuss all things mental health. My name is Charles Adede. In part one of this conversation, Rubie Miseda, a psychologist practitioner based in Nairobi, Kenya, shares about her childhood and some of the mental health challenges she unknowingly faced while growing up. This experience later motivated her to pursue studies in the social sciences, which culminated with a career in mental health. Rubie also shares about how she received holistic mental health support while studying in the UK, something which she hopes can be adopted for Kenyans and Africans. She gives her views on the role of culture in enhancing or impeding mental health. She discusses how different cultural backgrounds require different approaches in dealing with mental health issues and how studying sociology has enabled her craft culturally sensitive solutions for her members. She also discusses intergenerational trauma and how it manifests in the Kenyan and African context. Now welcome to part 2 of the conversation.
This is Me, I Am Mental, the podcast. A quick disclaimer. The content you find here is neither intended to be therapy or diagnosis. It is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only.
Now, I want us to move on a bit. Firstly, in terms of generations. So we have, right now, you would easily say there is Gen. Most baby boomers, quote unquote, are sort of not really participating actively in life. They do have their contribution, but for us, maybe now you're looking at the people who are actively in the arena are Generation X, the millennials, and Gen Zs, and maybe these are the southern new cohort. I don't even know whether there's a label.
The ones that are still babies.
That's those ones, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, there is definitely an interesting interplay in this country, which is probably I don't know whether that's the case globally, but I see like Gen X stand for a certain stolidness of character.
What was that word?
They're very stolid, very...
Stoic? Is that what you're saying?
They're stolid and stoic.
Well, I don't know.
Stolid would be very wooden.
Or stuck in their ways?
Yes, very...
Okay.
It's true, right? Sort of they're stuck in their ways. Okay. Most of us, and I fit that bill very well, most of us, you hardly access who I am as a person. You will access me as a professional, a what. But if you ask, can the real Charles please stand up? I will not be in a hurry to display that Charles, possibly because I don't even know who Charles is. I am all these other things.
Okay.
And then now we have millennials, who on the other hand display a certain level of self-awareness, okay, and a certain interest in knowing who they are. And there's a clash there, I think, in terms of, like even in workplaces, there's a certain clash between those styles of being. Mm-hmm. And then now we have Gen Zs who, I'll be honest, I can't really make them out yet.
Have you spent time with them before?
I think a bit of time. I don't know whether my kids fall in that bracket, because my kids are...
Do you spend time with your kids, Charles?
I do.
Okay.
But that's 14 and 10. But they don't represent I'm talking about the 20-somethings.
So you're just talking about...
the more adult...
The millennials.
Would they be millennials? Because I'm told...
Millennials end at 1996. 97? No, 96.
96,
Yeah.
isn't it? So those would be millennials still. But what
So the Gen Zs, you mean like the ones who are
say about someone
20,
who's about 20 now?
21,
Yes.
22, right?
So they have a slightly different way of being than millennials proper, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I want to understand from just generally speaking, if
Millennials born 81 to 96, Gen Z 97 to 2012, and Alpha is 2013 to now,
okay,
according to
interesting, yes.
the Oracle.
I think
Google.
so, in terms of mental health issues, would you very broadly categorize what you think would be the state of affairs for each of those, the issues that affect them, how they do life, and then at some point I'd also be keen to know what is your view about how these people are relating with each other?
So you're saying the state of affairs?
Yes.
It sounds
I know
very
it's a very
political.
interesting, yes, but I think that generationally there is something going on.
Of course.
Yes.
Because honestly, each and every one of us has been born into a different changing time. Like society has been changing. There's been a lot of social change. What do you call them? The gens. What?
Which ones?
Can
Let's
I use your
consult.
the Gen X's,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's me and Charles.
Yeah, the Gen X's in Africa were born in a transitional time of like the era of colonial power. So a lot of them were taught how to survive, work hard, make money, take care of everyone who.
No.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
So their perspective on life is very survival mode.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Then we have millennials. I'm a millennial. Then we are raised by Gen X's who are also trying to change a bit, but still like who are still like boomers. With Gen X's, I've noticed a lot of Gen X's, even millennials. Some are also raised by boomers. If you even look at it in the rural areas, some people are raised by grandparents.
Yes.
Remember, we need to take into consideration our family dynamic is very diverse from what is written in the books. Yeah. And then we have millennials, which I'm in, and then we have Gen Zs. So what I would say is there's a difference in self-awareness in terms of considering emotions and being and support, right? And also articulating what is considered as painful or not, and the concept of vulnerability. I'll take it through that point of, and also expression. Because I remember I had a conversation with a Gen X, and this is something that I'm doing research on. And I asked him about, what are your thoughts about how was it growing up, and what is the difference? The first thing that came out of his mouth was that millennials and Gen Zs are entitled.
I know, we say that all the time.
Exactly. And the entitlement stems from the fact that we were cushioned. We didn't struggle. We did not go to school barefoot. Okay, some do, but I'm speaking on the ones that I'm working with.
Yeah, I think it's just all nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
I think every generation thinks the next generation is entitled. It's just like a feature of being old. You complain about people who are young.
Exactly, and more up
Are you giving me the eye?
No. Coincidence. Just part of the conversation.
No. Yes.
And
yes,
it seems
go
like
on.
in each generation, people had different rights, right? Freedom of expression.
Yes, as in, whereas I do appreciate, I think what Darren has pointed out, it would also be interesting to know like I'm saying, that what you begin to explain, why would I feel like this person is entitled? So it's
because they're talking because they in our culture there's hierarchy.
Yes.
And one of my Gen Z members said that, Gen Z millennials said that they expect, they want children to always expect that they're right, even if the child knows that they're wrong. It's like
yeah, it's not good.
It's not good. It's like it's like a need to control.
Right? It is a need to control.
Exactly. But also I feel like millennials and Gen Zs, millennials in our country I've seen are also mixed with a bit of the Gen Xs, inherited certain things from Gen Xs, which they're paying for with their mental health. No offense.
That's interesting. Yes. I'd like a very candid, because I think most of us feel these things. We probably haven't even thought about them in a structured way, in a way that helps us even understand the dynamic. And therefore, like, a healthy conversation would be good, just to begin to tease out, why do we think these thoughts, why do we feel the way they do, how are we affecting each other? That's why I think it's a very interesting thing for me.
Yeah. So I'm just talking about basically the interactions I've had with members and patients, as I mentioned. What I've noticed with Gen Z clients is they tend to express a lot. They tend to try and ask for what they want, even if they're not deserving of it, right? Gen Zs and millennials, Gen Zs are taking risks faster than millennials. Gen Xs are more comfortable. So if we take, for example, they say, work hard, get a job, stick in that job. Millennials will do it and then one day jump ship, but then Gen Zs are just not doing it at all. So it's like they're learning from our mistakes.
Interesting.
I have siblings who are Gen Zs and millennials, and there was something that one of my sisters told me. She was like, she said, millennials are not as vulnerable as they think. We tend to keep things inside and distance ourselves from each other. We tend to isolate ourselves. And I asked her why. She's like, it's because I've been observing all of you.
But vulnerable, she meant open.
Yes, it's like we are falling into old habits of our parents.
Yeah. I mean, can't you just sort of expect that, like, every generation is ideally and generally speaking getting better than the previous? We're always sort of, I can only hope to do just a little bit better than how my dad raised me, and so on and so forth. But when you do a better job, you do tend to say, well, they have it easier because you provided for them to have it easier.
Yeah.
And so it's actually evidence of a good thing, but people use it as a way to complain.
And control.
Yeah, I think at the heart of it is probably control. And at the heart of it is probably a certain grievance, which maybe human beings want to carry with them for sacrifices they've made. Rightly so, you've just said rightly that, listen, I'm going to put myself out there and brave all this so that my kid doesn't have to. Then when my kid indeed doesn't have to, I feel like I raise a brat.
Why aren't you respecting?
So it's weird, isn't it?
And then you label him, and then he goes to someone like me and says, my dad just wants to control me. My dad doesn't understand. And even when you try to understand, you think you know better.
So what I wonder, therefore, is what do parents need to do? For instance, my parents could only share with me their understanding of life and what's supposed to, the things that would make me succeed, and I can say that they were half right, and then in some aspects they were terribly wrong, because life hasn't panned out at all in the way they thought it would. Maybe they hadn't factored in technological changes, they hadn't factored in urbanization and all these things that have happened, so that the things were insisting, they were insisting on instilling in me most of them have been rendered redundant. And now I have to figure my way out in a world which is very alien to me. But I have this baggage of trying to do it using the tools they equipped me with. And that's likely what I'm doing with my kids as well. And often it will also, so the kid maybe has also this, because I have that baggage from my upbringing. Then I maybe tried to make adjustments in my own life, and I came up with a set of ideas about how life should be done over and above what I was taught. And that's what I'm trying to pass on, but I'm not fully aware of what's going on in the lives of my child, but they are aware. They have a sense of what's going around. And so sometimes they feel that even what I'm trying to pass on has no place in their lives, but they can't speak up, because I'll tell them, I'm your dad. I know exactly what needs to happen. So it comes off as control. So we are not communicating. And I think that's where the breakdown tends to happen, isn't it? I want the best for them, but it's based on my perception, which is probably limited.
Yes, I guess one of the things that we all, like, I would also speak on my own experience, as I have a lot of siblings, and there was a time when my younger sister told me that. Then now I started to find out my younger brother, who we all love and adore, and we never wanted him to grow up. And then we started to find out information about his life, and I was like, what? And then I realized that I need to stop looking at them in terms of the fact that I'm older than them, but look at them in terms of them growing and trying to be a part of their lives. So I do interact, even like there's a time my brother was asking me, just tell me, Rubie, what's going on in your mind? So I shared with him, and then he gave me advice. And I realized I was building this new dialogue of where the hierarchy of our births and our age is not limiting me from building a new relationship with him and getting to know who he is, and him getting to know who I am.
That's really brilliant, I think. I think that could begin to solve some of the intergenerational problems we see. It is, I see, like, as a parent, you often put in that position where you assume that parenting means you have to be constantly in control. You're the one who is constantly leading the way. And therefore, in any given situation, you should have the answers beforehand. And sometimes when I do that, I just say dumb things, or I do dumb things. And I find that maybe I'm just scared of not being in control, as opposed to just taking time and agreeing that I really don't understand this situation. And maybe answers could come up from anywhere. If we created an environment where everybody can speak to this situation, then I'd be surprised that it's my daughter who has the answer, or my son who has the answer, or someone else who I didn't. But we are not really allowed that, because when something goes wrong, it will be my head on the chopping board as a parent. How did you allow this to happen? The problem is I am very limited, and I have a lot of baggage from my own upbringing, and so it's.
I do understand. I was speaking to some parents, and a lot of them say that I don't have a guidebook. We're doing the best we can. This society is very different, and I've seen some parents do try. It's very different for them, but they're doing the best that they can. Those ones that are putting in the effort, and they're trying to really understand the society their children are growing up in, their attitudes, because the society they grew up in was very different, and it has come to pass. So it's also the loss of that too, that things are not the way you thought they were. And there was a parent who said that she wishes she was born into this generation, which was quite interesting. because at least she could have become the woman she had wanted to be.
That's tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe there's also a bit of envy that these people, that somebody could, like, let's take for example even what we're doing now. It's very different. There was only a radio.
Oh, yes.
And some people are doing jobs as podcasts. Like my sister's an artist. I practice on my own. I started very young. Like there's so many. We start early. You don't have to start so late. There are even people who are telling me, "Well, I don't care. I don't wanna get married, or I wanna get married, or I don't wanna have children." And the people around them are like, "It's okay," but then the people in the generation they grew up, they'll be like, "Oh, is there something wrong with you? Are you barren? Oh my gosh, are you cursed?" So it's a very more freeing atmosphere for most of them. And now people can, like, you can even now see in certain movies where they show that a lot of generations are saying, the younger generation are saying that, though some of them use it as an excuse, but they'd say, "You're affecting my mental health. Why are you speaking to me that way? I don't like it." But back in the day, we would sit there and your parent is screaming at you, probably telling you some things that you are not emotionally mature to understand. And then you're supposed to carry on with your life. And even when you start crying, they're saying, "If I hear you cry, I will beat you even more." What does that teach that child? Or maybe your parents are kind to you when you're getting A's, and then when you've gotten like 90, or maybe you were at 90 and then you went to an 89, and then they start scolding you, you're punished. Do you know what happens to that child when they become an adult? They don't think they're good enough.
You never will. You never will.
Even if they try. So it's really important for us to understand that the way we displayed our emotions, affections, support has changed across the generation. The boomers' survival, a lot of, like, when did we get our independence in Kenya? How was Kenya during the colonial era? How did it shape the family structure? Because some members, their parents are quite old, right? And when I tell them, okay, I want you to have a discussion with your parents about how they grew up, how was the society then? And then they start telling me, "Oh, my parents were there during, almost during the colonial era. This is what was happening. This is how they were taught how to survive." And then now, Kenya has changed so fast from that era. Those survival techniques don't have no room.
And it has to be frustrating when you're living in between two worlds, because it feels like the boomers and the Gen X here in this country, they are really experiencing I mentioned earlier, that it's hard to navigate when the culture is changing so fast.
Yeah.
And your own children and grandchildren don't relate to you the way you expect. And I know for myself, like, when I'm confused, or if I don't have it all together and I'm not prepared to deal with whatever is going on, that's when I act out inappropriately. And it's usually evidence of me, and I'll try to blame, or it's
You
your fault,
externalize.
whatever, and that's just a clear indication that my crap is not together. And so when it comes to, like, abuse or raising your voice or being violent or all that sort of thing, it usually comes from a place of insecurity, wishing I had control. And one way I can get control, not that I do this, one way a person can get control is to just absolutely demand it, whether by physical force or not. And that's just, then that teaches what? It teaches the child that, okay, violence is a way to solve an issue. And so that just got to keep going and keep going, doesn't it?
Yeah. I guess what we're seeing is that, it's true. Like, a lot of changes are happening when you were raised in another generation, and then now this generation is coming up so fast. Like, we have people making money as bloggers, as Instagram models. Like, those were not taught in school, right? And some people are making more money younger. Like there's a lot of change, and it's also a bit confusing for them to try and see, how do I parent, right? And even we can talk about in our culture, in our society, you can see that even the boomers are trying to still parent the Gen X's,
Yes.
right? And then the Gen X's are frustrated because they want to parent the millennials, but the millennials love the boomers. That everyone's like, oh, I like my grandparents; they're so nice. And then the Gen X's are like, you don't understand. My dad was this, my mom was this, my uncle was this. Like they can name the list, and they're wondering why are they treating us very, very differently. But I guess hopefully with time, I hope that when it comes to explaining the impacts of mental health in Kenya or in other African countries, we can explain it in terms of the social changes that is happening around us.
Because sorry, go on.
In your when you went to school and your research and everything, has the cultural I heard that there was a culture, perhaps in North America with the first peoples there, where they actually in a village, they actually had grandparents raise the children. And that was just, you're all in the same community anyway, and they have the wisdom. So it's just like they literally were the ones who raised. Have you ever heard of this before? Because it makes so much sense to me that would be a totally workable system with people who are actually living together as families.
Yeah, like it still happens even currently, like in our society. It does happen. Even you can see it in the rural area where you find grandparents are raising people. My grandmother was also very present in my upbringing. I like my grandma. She's gone through a lot, but I'm happy to have a relationship with her. Like she also supports mental health, so I had to even explain to her what I was doing. But she's very highly educated, very bilingual.
It's just, the same story is always told. It's like the parents are always like, "Oh, that's not how they treated me. The way they're treating you, and that's just an indication that that's probably the way to do it."
Honestly, because there are times I remember I was very frustrated and I would just express myself, and I was on the phone with my grandmother, and my friend was like, "Who are you talking to over the phone like that?" I'm talking to my grandma.
Yeah, it's not mom.
It's
Mom would
not,
not
and she's
this.
just like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, my grandmother. She's been very present. Even when I was in uni, I would call her and I would talk to her, and I would always bring her gifts because she also participated in attributes of teaching me things in my life. Even my mom's sisters were also very present in my life. So I always say I have very many mothers, and I'm sure a lot of people in our society have that. Sometimes I've noticed that when a parent, like the parent that bore you, is not so loving, you'll maybe have an auntie or an uncle that gives you that affection, and you find that they've also molded you in a particular way. So it's that's why I always say we look at the whole sociological perspective, because there's so many people involved. Hence, when you are in the Western world, there are different family structures. The community is not as strong as it is here.
Totally,
I remember my housemate was saying, she said she only had one cousin or two, and I was like, what do you mean? It's like she hasn't spoken to them. I was like, I went to school with my cousins. I lived next to them, right? We watched each other grow. So it's that's why we look at it very differently, and how do we use the training and the techniques we have to draw up on helping these people understand the cultural reality that is around them and how to heal from them. And because they're going back into that society, the society that they're healing from is the society they're going to meet. So what are the coping mechanisms that we can develop together and customize it?
Well, it seems like it would have to be part and parcel with the whole therapy method. Is what you're saying makes sense. Is get to know the whole person and where they're coming from culturally. It's sort of amazing to blend sociology with the psychology.
Well, I didn't until I came here is when I realized.
Oh, really? It wasn't intentional.
It wasn't necessarily intentional, but it was a different. I found myself doing it. So when I learned about parental alienation, like things, or this is the primary socialization era, sorry, this is the secondary socialization era. And then you start to realize that that once you follow that track, then you can understand, okay, these are the presenting complaints, this is predisposed, then you deal with the mind area.
So, Ruby, I do have a question for you around the generations. The thing that I wanted to know is, have you observed certain trends regarding who tends to be more self-aware when it comes to mental health and who seeks mental health support when they need? And is there anything you might want to advise members of the different generations around mental health in view of your experience around that?
Well, first of all, I'm a millennial, so a lot of the people I meet are millennials and Gen Zs. But I would say between Gen Zs and millennials, because a lot of Gen Zs are still under their parents. So I've had people who've called me and they're waiting to turn 18 so they can come and see me because their parents don't believe in therapy. And their parents are Gen Xs. So millennials, a lot of them see me. I've seen a lot of trends because they can now afford it. And they're now the first person to do it. But then I've also had Gen Xs who have gone through therapy who are now bringing their children. Okay. Yeah. But I would say the biggest population is millennials and also Gen Zs. As I said, a lot of Gen Zs are not financially stable yet and they're still under their parents' roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
That also, do you reckon that is a pointer towards fewer Gen Z seeking help or being less aware?
I don't think they're less aware. I think they're just limited by financial.
Sorry, I meant Gen X. My apologies. Gen X. What do you think about
I think with Gen X's, some are starting to adapt a lot gradually because, they've given birth to millennials and Gen Zs and their children are coming back towards them.
What about gender balance throughout? I mean, who's coming to you? Is it mostly women, mostly men, or is it?
Now it's mostly women, but when I started, 90% of my members were men.
Really?
In fact, my first member was a man.
Okay.
So, but currently, if I look at the balance.
What about how that intersects with generation? I mean, is it true for all generations that come to you, or is there more Gen X's that are men, or?
The people who are seeing me, the men are millennials. Okay. Yeah, and now Gen Z are starting to come. Mm-hmm. But if I look at the consensus from Jipende, women are more.
Mm. And then what about what percentage of them, generally speaking, are parents themselves?
Because I work with very small, like 5%.
Really?
Yeah.
Of parents?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But do you reckon that might be the nature of your practice or something to do with you being a millennial that you, maybe someone older would come and think, what would she be knowing about my issues? And therefore they look for, someone they reckon is more quote unquote age appropriate.
I actually don't think that there's an issue with someone feeling comfortable with a therapist of their age because of certain experiences that they're looking for. But it could be also my age, and the nature of my practice is more appealing to millennials and Gen Zs. But then Gen X's parents also like the fact that I'm young and they get shocked by my true age.
Okay.
As even some people who are millennials and they see me, they ask me, okay, what's your true age? And I'm like, no, I'm older than you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I get to do, I think with the way I practice, I get to also have fun with it and learn more with them and have fun with them. And
What do you mean by have fun?
I do rock climbing with some of my clients. I do
that sounds fun.
yoga. I go for walks with them. We play games.
Yeah, which is now
What?
that's where we want
Is
you
that a
to.
thing?
Yes.
Wait. Did you guys know that therapists will go rock climbing with you?
I go on drives with them. Because at the same time I did home-based therapy when I was in the UK. So I loved the organization I was working in, and then
Well, okay, you're blowing my mind here. I did not know this was. I've been to a couple therapists for a short amount of time until I fired them all. No, I'm just kidding. But I never was anything but like sitting in an office.
No, I don't own an office.
Oh, so that's a thing. Tell me more about this.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of this?
This is like introducing Jipende. Ladies and drum roll.
Wait, I mean, is this common?
I don't know.
I think it's
I
very
don't know.
novel. That's how I was
Very
telling you.
normal?
Novel.
Novel,
This is
okay.
because this is that I was telling
Novel
you.
means new.
He's using hard English dictionary.
Just messing with the crew. Okay.
But yes, it's very fascinating. I got very fascinated when she was telling me how she does her thing. So perhaps you could just introduce us first.
Yeah.
Where you started with the story.
Okay.
Your experience when you got back.
Okay, so my experience wasn't that nice when I got back. There's a lot of exploitation happening.
What do you mean?
I, from my experience, feel that psychiatrists take advantage of psychologists in Kenya.
Okay, I don't know.
So you don't feel like you can stand on your own. But then I've always been into holistic health. When I used to work in the private hospitals, I got really unwell because of my caseload, and the work environment was not hospitable for me. And I didn't work for 6 months. I never even wanted to come back and practice. I just hated the field as it is, and I was like, I'm going back. I'm probably going to be a professor, pack up my stuff, go back to England, live a simple, boring life there, and come back and visit Kenya. But as I said, the world had other plans for me.
So you're saying the caseload was so much that you just didn't want to go to work?
Yeah, you can see up to even 7-12 clients in a day. That's not possible. As a human being, you get exhausted. And then you have like a huge group therapy load. So where do you have time to even research? Where do you have time to even do different things? I was burning out, recovering, re-burning out. I think I was just burning out one after the other. Then I got really unwell, and my anemia came back. I got diagnosed with a condition, and I was very fatigued, lethargic. So at that time I was also seeing my own therapist, and she really helped me go through that transition. And when my health, because I had a team again. I've been fortunate. I had a gyno, I had a nutritionist, I had a physiotherapist, and then I had a psychologist, and I had the support of my friends.
And that was here in Kenya?
That was here in Kenya. But that was created by me.
Okay.
Simultaneously. And then one of my best friends got me onto yoga. She's a yogi, and I love how she also takes care of her health. And then I started doing it, and also my physiotherapist. So then after that, I recovered, and then I went into research, said that was boring, left, and then I spoke to one of my friends who has his own company in the UK, and I was telling him about my frustration, and I couldn't even get a job because there were rumors going around about how I don't need a job. I got a lot of discrimination because I was British educated, though I'm Kenyan. So I was at a disadvantage, but not necessarily, because I I have diverse disciplines and wonderful people around me. So he's like, let's start and do it. And then he started to walk me through it, because he usually helps small people. He usually helps startups, not even before it's a startup, but when you're actually doing the brainstorming ideas. So we planned everything, and then
you planned a
business plan.
A rock climbing clinic.
Not necessarily. We planned organization. So Jipende is a limited company with new future plans. So everything we've done has been in phases. So we Jipende was now birthed. He told me, just tell me your ideas, let's put it down. So I was just, and when I spoke to a lot of my friends, they told me I had been speaking about this thing actually for very many years ago.
Okay, it was always rattling around, but
it was always
actually...
they always used to tell me, I would talk to them about, I want to start this.
So you set up a limited company that was basically you and some partners who were going to do...
my partnership, the intellectual property is mine, so the partnership was dissolved, but it was mine. I brought them on board.
Okay. Yeah. And so, and then the concept is basically that you are a psychologist practitioner who it sounds like uses less than conventional sessions.
Yes, and I work with them.
Can you give me the elevator pitch of what it is?
Okay, so for like if you wanted to start doing Jipende, like become a member, right? We have 4 different programs. We have the 4 different programs are under 2: individual wellness program and group wellness program.
Okay.
So in the individual wellness program, I have the self-awareness program, which you can come for 4 sessions. You can vent, you can learn a little bit about yourself. Then we have the self-development.
I love venting.
Yeah. So you do well with the self-awareness program. Then we have the self-development program, right? That deals with, depression, anxiety, ADHD,
Telling me what's wrong with me.
Well, there's steps, yeah. So then we have the mental wellness program, which are people who are on medication. So I'm working with a psychiatrist. Then I have the aftercare program. So everyone, when you're done, you come on an aftercare program to see how you're reintegrating back into society.
So even if you've done parts 1 or 2 or 3, you will do 4?
Yeah, you see, mental wellness program is now an individual one, separate. So, because that's when we're dealing with medication.
Oh, I see.
But then, self-awareness program, we don't do aftercare because it's a short one.
Okay.
And then, when you start with us, you're given a membership number and a wristband. But I've run out of my wristbands. I should have brought you guys some.
Do we get a button or?
Yeah, and I always tell my clients that we work as a team, right? And I customize it based on your presenting complaints. So we also have your
presenting complaint? Is that what you called it?
Yeah, the presenting complaints. It's a simpler way. What are the complaints? What are the problems?
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
And then everyone is given a welcome package. So a welcome package has our introductional letter, an introduction to being a member, a program protocol, our actual wellness handbooks with the steps, and also a sample program that I've done with a teenager. And then it has our website, our Instagram. And then when you finish, you can become an ambassador, or you can come and tell your story on our platform. So a lot of the people who've shown up on my platform are Jipende Wellness members.
So that definitely appeals to the younger set who's more exploitive of their lives, Instagrammers, that kind of thing, right?
But it's not necessarily exploiting.
I know, I definitely used the wrong word just then.
But then even you can write, that's the thing, you can write. It's more of you're taking charge of your story.
Becoming a bit of a champion for mental health in the process.
It's normalizing the conversation and demystifying mental health in Africa through therapy. Mental health
that's so great.
Has different faces.
Yeah, in fact, that's the bit that I really like about when I did go and look at your website and some of the material you shared with me. I was thinking there's a bit about mental health generally enjoys this dubious reputation of being something like you have to be in trouble. That if you're interested, then you're sort of in trouble.
Yeah.
But there's a sense in which awareness should just be awareness. Really, it should be something that everybody just gets, so that you even use on that basis. If you're in trouble, then you can also know, here I am in trouble. And there's a sense you get when I'm looking at some of that material. That's just raising awareness, just making people a lot more aware of what's going on with them. They don't necessarily have to be unwell or in a funk. And then there are those ones who, when they are in a funk, yes, they're aware and they become more aware, and also in terms of the things they can do to sort themselves out. So the process of making mental health an everyday conversation thing is a really nice thing, I think.
It is, and you can also have fun with it, right? You also have power. So you can have the option of online or home-based. So even like some of my clients who are probably in the diaspora and they're coming home, they can also meet me, right? We can meet at your favorite coffee place. I've baked with some of my Gen Z clients, right? Especially my Gen Z clients, they like to have fun. And I realized I've gone on walks I've gone on walks in Karura. I taught even one of my clients was like, I really want to learn how to ride a bike. So I was teaching her how to ride a bike, and then, it's part of her mental health journey. Because remember, I was also a support worker, so I also have the trainings in that.
So did we cover how the group therapy works then?
Oh yeah, so now with the group therapy one, the most thing that I was doing was corporate. So I've worked for corporates, and I've dealt with a hospitality company, and I've dealt with environmentalist company and IT tech companies.
So is this sort of like mental team building, mental health?
Yes,
what is this?
So what I
how do you
was
go
doing
about
with
that?
them,
Yeah.
the program that I did with them was a stress management program, right? And we'd also play games, and we had stress bingo, and just for them to understand and be aware about their stress, and use case studies. They were always trying to make it relatable.
Wow.
Okay. And breaking down stress, but then we would have breaks, we'd have games, and then the winners would win gifts and get certificates.
I like any
and
therapy that comes with
handbook.
gifts. The very first time I went to a therapist, it was my girl and I were having a tragic time. We should go to couples therapy, and the therapist spent like 5 or 10 minutes talking to us about how we were not allowed to give him gifts. Why are we talking about it? I get it. That's a boundary thing. But why are you spending any amount of time on this?
Oh, they took a. Okay.
It was weird. Like, we gotta get rid of this guy. He's already a weirdo.
And I usually give them gifts like wristbands. So I always ask my members, what kind of therapist would you like me to be? What are you looking for? Because it's their story, it's their journey. They want somebody to walk with them.
Do you need to be extremely, does it offend any professional, or does it raise any ethical issues if you're very unorthodox in how you approach therapy?
I'm not breaking any.
Yeah, it's not so much unorthodox, it's novel.
It's just that I've used a different language, right? I'm not a robot. I'm doing different things, and at the same time, I have different trainings. So I'm.
Does it raise eyebrows in the?
No, they like it a lot.
You must have colleagues within the field who wish they were part of your practice. I would suspect that people wanting to participate with you would be.
Yeah, there are people who've when I was even starting up, everyone was like, can I join? And I've had even offers for people to buy the company, but it was still too young. But we got to realize they were trying to buy my IP. So they dissolve what I create, and then I create it for them. But I've had people call, and some have inquired because they want to know and snoop, what are you doing? But obviously, I'm very well aware. But then there's also a very good friend of mine that she's also coming up with something very interesting. So I would say she's the first person I've met who kind of is also going to bring something more interesting into the field that is not very generic and textbook based.
Yeah. Well, I feel this plays really well into the whole idea of the podcast we have at Me, I Mental, is that trying to express to people that mental health is like not the guy drinking shampoo on the street corner who has that problem, but looking at mental health as something like going to the gym, which everyone seems like, hey, 1st of January, we got a lot of people doing that because they know it's the right thing to do. And whether or not they stick to it is different, but at least we all know that's just the right thing to do. It's healthy, it's good, it's socially acceptable, and it improves you over time. And sticking with it is one of the things that makes you really grow as an individual physically. But why can't we apply that same thing to mental health and making it seem just as acceptable, but also just as capable of strengthening our minds as the way we'd strengthen our bodies? It sounds like that's exactly what you're doing.
Yes, I believe in early intervention. Right?
Like get in there before there's...
Well, like just, I always tell people the whole concept is for us to help you understand your story better. Understand why you behave the way you behave, or even learn how to understand how your brain functions.
So with the understanding of how your brain functions or the way you are, are you also assisting in giving like a toolbox and explanations of how to use these tools along the way?
Yes.
Is that where the rock climbing comes in?
Well, I always, one of the things I always, nowadays I ask my members, what are your interests, what are your talents? Because some of them have coping mechanisms that can really help them, and they just need to internalize it. Or if you want to have fun, let's go have fun.
Right. Well, I guess, so you're saying...
No, not like in the wrong way. Like if you want us to, go rock climbing and then after sit down. Because I'm a very active person, so I think that's what benefits the most. I practice yoga and all these things. So these are part of my...
Well, and I imagine there's probably coping mechanisms that are already healthy that they don't even realize are coping mechanisms. Like maybe if you're into rock climbing, maybe that you're doing that as a way to physically work out stuff, a little bit of alone time, but also experiencing the metaphor of, if you're rappelling, you've got support from down below that's helping you climb the heights you need to go. I mean, you can bake in sort of the jargon of the sport or the activity into the mental health explanation of terms. That's I would look at it like this is like this. Your belay or whatever it's called is like your doctor or whatever.
Yeah, and I believe in alternative ways of giving mental health support too. I met someone, his name is called Matthew Green, and he does emotional fitness in South Africa, and he took me through a couple of sessions, and honestly it was really, really helpful. The pressure points and focusing, and I think there's so many other unique alternative ways that can also be added into talk therapy, like for example reflexology. Sometimes I suggest to my members, you can try reflexology, and then some of them pick it up and they come and we talk about the emotions they're carrying on their body. And that's the line that I want to go.
No, this is fantastic. The model of Wellness Africa is, are you super proud?
I am. I think I'm also very lucky that I have the support that I have, right?
Just like friends and family, people who are like cheerleaders.
Especially my partner in the UK.
Okay.
Like he changed my life. He brought a confidence he sparked a confidence inside me that I never knew I had. So I am very proud because I've checked a lot of things off my bucket list.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely.
You feel like you're, so there's a couple of perspectives. Like I worked for a company one time, I was like, why don't we grow? And the owner was like, everyone here is their families are taken care of, we're all doing fine. Growth is only going to be more complicated. Why can't we just be satisfied? Why does growth have to be the goal? Do you feel like you need to grow and expand and franchise your IP to other places, or do you feel like you're in the zone, or what?
I think that's where we're heading to. Well, that's where Africa Jipende Wellness is heading to. And it will also give me a lot of time to do a lot of creative things. By expanding and implementing fun things into it. Because what I've done is I've done the groundwork and I've done these different activities with my members, and now I'm like, aha.
Do you have children?
Huh?
Do you have a child therapy aspect?
Not at the moment. So far, I just deal with adolescents and young adults and above. Yeah.
And that last time we spoke, you also mentioned, we remember, I think just before we parted, I asked you whether you reckon are you mostly like an intellectual, or, and I think there is an aspect of the professor thing which you may still want to pursue. It's on that bucket list, I suspect. Right?
When I'm like old, but I think one thing I would say is Jipende is a reflection of also who I am and my personality.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm adventurous. I like to try new things. I like to experiment. But when COVID hit, that died a bit, but now it's coming back up. So I'm feeling more alive, and. Yeah, but the professor thing, maybe later on.
Maybe later on.
Yeah, maybe later on. But Jipende, I always say Jipende is my gift to Africa.
Okay.
Hopefully Africans will accept my gift. I'm not telling they don't want it, honestly. But I just want Jipende to be a very safe space for people, where they can find ways of expressing themselves. Because people are diverse, and I don't want it to be so generic that people feel like they don't fit in. Yeah.
Do you reckon Jipende caters more to the like the urban than the rural sort of client?
I would say currently those are the members that I'm working with, people who are in Nairobi and outside the diaspora. So of course, yes.
I would suspect that a rural person would probably enjoy it just as much.
They would.
So in fact, that is the point I was going to make. I was going to say, is there a possibility of then perhaps if you think there's a different, like you need to tweak the approach for them so that everybody is sort of onboarded, then
obviously, because I did, when I came to Kenya, when I came back home, the people that I worked with did not come from came from the lower social income background. So I spent a lot of time with them and did a lot of research. So that's definitely something I have already in the back of my mind. But as I said, one thing that I've learned with entrepreneurship is how you scale up gradually. So I'm learning with the help of my partner to scale up gradually in a place where I don't burn out and be this horrible person.
You don't want to replicate the problem.
And now I also know okay, I think the reason I find that one of the most rural areas totally underserved when it comes to mental health. And there's devastation out there. It's absolute devastation. Anything about alcoholism and war and all those, the madness going on out there. So I think, maybe
and here.
And here, isn't it?
Yeah.
But almost everybody tends to set up here because I think the infrastructure is a lot more advanced. It makes sense from many, like especially if you're a private practitioner, you have limited resources. When you have to go further down, then maybe you need additional support from governments, and it becomes another program
like
entirely, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's more NGO type setup. So it's more challenging to set up. But to the extent that one can, I think it's always, we probably need to also think about ministering to that community.
Yes, most definitely. That would that needs to be done, and hopefully gradually, as Jipende reaches to the level it needs to reach, it would also find its ways there. And one of the things as I said, I was learning is how do I implement each goal gradually without affecting the other things that I've been doing.
I see. Yeah. You can't be everything to everyone.
Yes, because I'm a very present, I would say. Okay, that's not the correct word. I'm very reachable for for my members. So even when they don't have sessions and they're having a bad day, they can call for like 10 minutes and we try and process. I'm very present in their journey. I try and walk with them to the best, and try and be a support for them to the best way I can, because I'm trying to find different ways in which I can create those systems in Jipende. So I've done a lot of
Well, that must be challenging too, though, to be available in that way.
It is, but it allows me to now structure something.
Yeah, I'm sure it's filled with data to help.
But you see, the thing is,
burnout seems real if you're
the burnout seems
getting WhatsApp messages at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh no, they don't do things like that. But also at the same time, I work with people from different time zones.
Oh,
Yeah, so I have.
Wow. Okay, that's
an my members are not only based in Kenya; they're also in Tanzania. They're in America, in the UK, in Germany. Like the Africans that are scattered outside.
So there is, if you're to scale up, it would probably mean you trying to replicate yourself in others, in whoever you're working with, isn't it? So you may need to train them in your ways and establish certain standards so that then you're able to scale up, because you would expect that any person who is interacting with Jipende, they get the exact, that feel, that taste, isn't it?
Yes, there is a psychologist that I've been doing that with, and she's done psychology and sociology. So that's also been amazing. But it's also creating a standard for Jipende Wellness, but also trying to also have unique therapeutic techniques from also the other psychologists that they can bring on board.
Yeah. All right. So I think let's bring this to a close, Darren.
Okay. That's my job.
It's your job.
Thank you once again, everyone who tuned in to Me, I'm Mental. It's been a fascinating conversation with Rubie Miseda and with Jipende Wellness Africa. Or Africa Jipende Wellness?
Africa Jipende Wellness.
Africa Jipende Wellness. And so I encourage you to definitely go to our website at meimental.me, where we'll have links to her socials as well as Rubie's official website. And I encourage you to explore mental health, even if you're just curious about the subject in general. That's an okay place to start. And tuning into the podcast is also a great entry. And check out more of our topics. Once again, you can find us at meimental.me, and all the socials, Instagram and Facebook are linked through there. And we are so appreciative that you tuned in. And thank you very much to Rubie.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you so much, Rubie. And thank you, everyone. We will see you next time.